Life Audio.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Billy and the Goat, the show dedicated to helping you overcome life's challenges, overcoming adversity. Our guest today is a good friend of mine. We attended the Naval Academy together. His name is Neil Stratton. We played football together briefly, I might add. In his words, quote, he was a walk-on outside linebacker. During this time, Stratton earned the distinction of being perhaps the worst player on the worst team in America during the late 80s. End quote.
I mean, you played. I didn't play.
Come on, man.
We had some struggles back in the days.
Look, we didn't have a strong football team. So there was some truth to that. So anyway, after Neil's service, Neil helped start a small draft-oriented publication called Lone Star Football, LSF, with his business partner in 1997. They published 4 editions annually around the time the internet was taking hold and draft information entered the fabric of American life. Although Lone Star Football only lasted until 2000, Neil discovered that there was no information service solely for the football professionals. So, in 2002, he launched his current company, Inside the League, ITL. He published one report daily from Monday through Friday, September all the way through the end of the NFL draft in April. Through hard work and perseverance, Inside the League grew, so much so that in 2008, Stratton was hired to run the 2008 Hula Bowl, which turned out to be the final performance of a venerated game that once featured names like Dan Marino, Joe Montana, and Tony Dorsett. In order to fully put his focus on his duties as executive director of the game, Stratton shuttered the ITL site in fall of 2007. But his love and passion for what he created was still eating away to him. Eager to continue his work, he retooled ITL in the fall of 2008. This time, the service would publish several times weekly with a 12-month news cycle. Inside the League clients responded, and slowly the service grew. Since then, ITL has added several other popular features and services, which include seasonal newsletters, a free weekly email called Friday Wrap, a thriving Twitter account, a daily blog called Succeed in Football, a YouTube channel, and he's written a book called Moving the Change, a guide to the NFL draft for parents with sons considering a career in football. Wherever you are in the football world and whatever your budget, ITL has the tools that can help you succeed. They will work with you and help you make your dreams come true. Neil, my brother, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure, Billy, and I've been a fan of the show for a long time, and it's encouraging, and it's exciting to see what you built and what you're building here, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Now, going back to our football days, man, that's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. But there was, you know what, there's some truth to it. Like I said, you remember, I mean, what did we were, I think, first year was 2-9, 3-8, 4-7, 3-8, something like that.
But we were 2-2 against Army, right?
You what? Exactly.
And really that's what matters. At least we didn't go 1-3. You know, I mean, it's funny there for a long time. We forgot what it's like. There for a long time, my kids never knew what it was like not to beat Army. You know, we had that great run. What was it?
Oh, yeah. You can easily forget.
Yeah, but at least we batted 500 on that. You know, I mean, if we'd gone 0 for 4, that would have been torture. If we'd gone 1 for 3, it would have been better twice.
Exactly. There you go.
That's what matters.
Good stuff, baby.
Half full, not half empty. Half empty, right?
Exactly. Let me ask you this. Starting out, growing up, stress, anxiety, like we all dealt with it, right? How'd you deal with it? How'd you deal with it growing up? How do you deal with it now?
Yeah. You know, when I was a kid, I guess I was like anybody else. You know, on the good days, you love to be a Christian. On the bad days, you kind of forget maybe that he's got a plan for you, and that you need to be encouraged by that, and not forget it. I think that's something that I struggle with. I remember, I think I accepted Christ in Bible school of second or third grade, and so he was in my heart. And and Billy, I was fortunate. Like you, my parents put the love of Christ in me early on. I didn't have to figure all that stuff out later, so I had that with me. So I hope that as I've matured as a Christian, I look to him more when the chips are down, and I try to find a way to understand, that he does have a plan for me, Jeremiah 29:11, and all those kind of things. And I probably don't go to the scriptures as much as I should when I'm facing those things, but I do think I do it more than I used to. The other way that I think he helps me and that he's created for me, and you know this well, is I'll wake up in the morning lots of times, and even after I'm done with my devotions, even after I've gotten off of my knees, after I've read the scripture for the day, I'm still nervous about something that's gonna happen. But I've gotten to where I used to be kind of an afternoon, evening workout guy, but I'm a morning workout guy now. And anytime I get back from the gym, I feel better than I did. So that's more of a physical tension breaker for me, whereas the spiritual and emotional side comes from the scriptures and knowing his plan for me, never forgetting that. So I guess that would be kind of my two ways that I fight against that.
Man, you know what I've learned? I'm just listening to you. So first of all, second or third grade, you gave your life to God?
Yeah, it was early. I distinctly remember standing in that hallway in Lakeview United Methodist Church and making that declaration, that announcement, and accepting him. So again, I mean, really, a lot of people have, kind of Paul on the road to Damascus kind of stories. I don't have that. I've got, scales didn't come off my eyes when I was a grown up. I mean, I was blessed to grow up with parents who loved the Lord, so I was always around that. Now, they wanted me to make my own profession of faith, obviously, but I did, and it was pretty early in life. Now, that's certainly not to say that you would think that I never made that profession at times in life when you saw me, when I was the biggest heathen out there. But it's, once he is in your heart, that's forever. And so that is something that I've always had going for me, is no matter what, he never, even when I turned my back on him, he didn't turn his back on me. So, that's been a blessing, and that's something that I've, that I still go back to, knowing that he has been faithful all these years. I'm 54 years old now,
He's always been there, man. And so, right. Thinking back, I know that when I was second or third grade, it wasn't like that for me. I had a completely different experience, a completely different pathway. Not to say that my family was not in the church. Like my grandmother, deeply. And then my mom was, but I didn't have the same rearing, It was really different. And on my walk, I've noticed there's levels to this. Like you right? Like when you were second or third grade, then there was, elementary school, high school, what have you. Your faith now is, you get it.
More mature, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And good on you, man, for staying with it. For there's something to be said for that, because there's so many reasons not reasons not to, but there's so many distractions in life, in the world,
Yeah.
How are you able to stay on the path?
I don't know what the answer is per se. Obviously, you try to spend quiet time with God every day. I don't do that every day. I certainly don't have a perfect record on that. I try to, I attend church regularly, all those things, the manifestations that you think of when you think of Christianity. But that deeper walk, hopefully, is something that's just a reflection that I don't think about. I remember when this is like 97 or 98, when I first moved to Houston, I had a little time on my hand. This was long before ITL. And so I waited tables. I'd never waited tables before. I was like, at this point, I'm like 27, 28 years old. And I had time on my hands, so I was going to do it. Well, in one day I was working with this girl, and she said, "Hey, you're a believer, right?" And I had never shared my faith with her. I didn't know that
Right.
she had a faith path. I didn't know any of those things. But she said, when she asked me that, I said, "Yeah." And I felt good, not a pride thing, but that God was being reflected off of me in a way, even when I wasn't thinking about it. And that's
Yeah.
God's doing, not mine.
Yeah.
But it was a good feeling to know that if nothing else, I hadn't been reflecting total negativity or a pattern of behavior that certainly did not, represent him in a positive way. And so that was exciting. Again, not my doing, but so glad that it worked out the way that it did.
Amen, brother. And
Yeah.
obviously, your wife, Polly, and your kids, your two boys, the apple don't fall too far from the tree. Can you talk about your family and regarding?
I hope not. And the thing about Billy, this is another thing that while Polly and I certainly have been faithful churchgoers and have tried to put God first, you don't always necessarily think about that. But again, by God's grace, our boys are really in a good place. And so many, they face so many challenges now growing up in our modern culture. There's so many ways for them to stray. Again, we've just been blessed that hasn't happened yet. And you don't ever take a day for granted. That could change at any time. We talked before we got on here about Will going to a Young Life camp. And
right.
That didn't happen by accident, Billy. It doesn't happen if you're not providing that kind of direction and leadership that you have always done. I mean, when I used to be on Facebook, I always look forward to the posts that you put up about Will and all that kind of thing. And just being a dad, I saw, I think one time, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago when I was still pretty early in this journey, there was something that was posted on Focus on the Family's website, and it talked about just enjoy your kids. Don't act like it's a chore. Don't feel like you've got this massive weight on your shoulders. Be you, be with them, love them, and that's probably going to be all it takes. And it's not quite that simple, but it's generally that simple. And that's been our experience. It's such a blessing to see it. And when I think about my kids, I just start laughing, not because it's not that I'm laughing at them. It's just that I'm filled with joy. And you probably the same way with Will, So it is a blessing to have them. I never take that for granted. And the way that they have grown is exciting. And I hope that never ends. But you never stop kind of being on guard about it. And you never stop trying to be the best role model you can be, because things can change on a dime these days, or any day, really.
Now, to Williams Camp Capernaum, I got to give his mom the credit. I didn't know what it was. To be fair, I've been working on myself, and I dove deep into my faith and my walk, like 2016, going through a lot. We had a divorce. But anyway, I was really concerned with William, just like with your kids, you want to be faith and get in the word. And, of course. And just like you just said, that's all guy, man, and he's at camp now, which is awesome. It's so good, man. When you have the family, the nurturing, godliness, faith-based family, I mean, that's everything. Everybody, I think we all stray in different ways off the path sometimes, And my mom shared this with me. She's like, and it came from her father, mother and father, my grandparents, and it was a strong core, and it was dignity and faith, and we had something. If we went astray, we had something to come back to. Some people don't have, you know what I mean? They don't have something to come back to.
I know exactly what you mean.
They just off in the wilderness. And with today, with all the stuff that's out here, man, y'all are doing a great job, man. Be proud of that. That's awesome.
It's not our doing. It's not our doing, Billy. It's Christ's doing. And he doesn't forget his children. It's like you said, Billy. I mean, you're growing more. Maybe you had some ups and downs. We all have. But I think once he loves us, and I think that's something we forget about sometimes, even when we're not worthy of his love, obviously. And that's how I try to start my prayers every morning. I talk about, hey, because I try to praise him first, and the first thing I say is, look, I'm not even worthy to speak your name, but you know me, you love me, and you think, and you're invested in me, and only a divine Father would be willing to do that. So praise his name that we have that.
Is there a time, looking back on your life, it might be a couple times, but one in particular that stands out, where there was a lot of stress and you seemed to be in the fire and there was no way out, but you had your faith. It was like the size of a mustard seed. Can you share a time where?
There are a couple times. One was really vivid to me. I'd moved to Houston at 7, and this was when, again, this was long before I met my wife. This was long before I started inside the league. I just come here to work at the Houston Chronicle, and it was a very low level kind of job. And but I met this girl who seemed to have everything that I was looking for, and we got really close really fast, and then it was over really fast. Mm-hmm. And so when that happened, my reaction was, God, I mean, I really thought that this was the plan. This didn't happen. And so when that happened, I kind of went the other way, and I had some rebellious times. And so I was doing things, living a lifestyle I had never lived before, because I always try to be really faithful to God's plan sexually. And in my despair, I called my brother, and he said, the thing about it, you can't go into a situation thinking, well, I probably shouldn't do this, or this, but I can probably get away with this, or this. You got to go into a situation thinking, this is what I'm not doing. And furthermore, don't even put yourself in that situation. Those are really, I don't even know if those are necessarily spiritual. That's not even necessarily spiritual advice per se, but it really found a home in my heart then, because I was like, I can't just be drifting along and hoping for things. I've got to decide if I'm going to walk God's path or I'm going to walk Neil's path. And I may be upset right now, and I may feel frustrated. I may even feel betrayed. But the fact is, he has never forsaken me, and I don't think it's going to start now. And when that happened, after that happened, it wasn't very long until I met Polly. And then then it looked like, and then it was a situation, and I can talk about Polly later, but I remember the first time I met Polly, I thought, what am I missing? What's wrong here? Why would a girl like this make it to 28 and not be married? And I'm 29, I'm not married. There's got to be something going on. Does she have a bunch of kids? Is she divorced? I mean, has she been divorced twice? All the things that I was looking for, she had, and that can only be a God thing. For me to be kind of lost in the wilderness, fail out of Navy, lots of bumps in the road, lots of ups and downs, and to finally find someone that late in life, I mean, relatively speaking, can only be a God thing. And that's, I think, one of the things that even now I remind myself about, because it was so unexpected, and I was so demoralized and kind of lost hope. And that was God's reminder that I was never anywhere but in the palm of his hand.
Wow. I marvel at that, man. You know what stands out to me the most? Of course, Polly, because we talked about Polly a little while ago. But you just said it. Like, you were having a rough time, and your brother helped set you straight.
Right.
Because this has been established in your family. Like, you had someone to go to. They had someone on the right path. There's so many people who are not, who can't
and
go.
Again,
you know what I mean?
That's another blessing, Billy. That's another blessing.
Yeah.
That's another thing that God put in my path that allowed me to stay on the path,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to talk about inside the league, man. A lot of the younger generation don't have an understanding for what you've done, what you've created. Okay. It's taken a long time, but if you could explain the creation, its infancy, where it is now, and then talk about, we didn't have this before. You know what I mean? You went from not having anything like this to having this.
Yeah.
And people that of today think they can't understand it because they're used to it. When you're used to having something all the time, you know, just like having a remote control. Like we have remote control, right? Kids are used to that. Yeah. We used to have to go to the TV and, man, get up, go change the channel. Right? Right? So, look, man, you need to be commended for that. Your creation of ITL, that, bro, you're on another level. You're on another level. Please go in depth on about that.
So I moved to Houston, as I kind of already mentioned, in '97, and one of the first people that I met was a guy named Troy Brown. I met this girl at my office at the Chronicle, and she said, "Oh, you should meet my fiance. He loves football and the draft and all that kind of stuff." I said, "Okay." So I met Troy, and Troy wanted to be the next Mel Kiper Jr. A lot of people now don't even know who that is, but he's kind of the father of draft information, all those kind of things. And this is you know, late '90s, and so this is when print is kind of on the downslope and internet's kind of on the way up. You know, not long before the world was the way we now know it. But so for 4 years, Troy and I did a draft guide, and he did the offense and I did the defense, and we did a print draft guide, and we had a lot of fun and got to do some cool things. But at the end of the day, we were pretty much taking turns spending about $2,000 to publish a guide that we would stack up in our garage. So, but I started going to all-star games. My first Shrine game, I think, was in '01 or '02. And so I go out there and I get to talking to people, and there's agents there, and there's scouts there, and there's coaches, and there's all these people from around the game. And at the time, they had just started a publication called Street and Smith Sports Business Journal. And that was the first kind of publication that recognized what we call sports business news. It was about money, you know. And in the early 2000s, that's when NFL teams started to move around, and college coaches starting to get paid in the millions of dollars, and you know, now we're in the tens of millions of dollars. And recruiting was getting crazy. And but more than anything else, the idea of being a sports agent had become something really sexy because the movie Jerry Maguire came out. And so a lot of people, a lot of young men in their teens and 20s saw that movie and said, now I know what I want to be. Now I know what I want to try to do, and all those kind of things. And it really glamorized that lifestyle and that business and all those kind of things. And so, you know, back then TBS, it was on TBS 3 times a day practically. I thought, you know what, Street Smiths is doing their thing in print. I'm going to start something online, and it's going to be only online, and it's going to be subscription based, and people are going to pay a monthly fee, and all I'm going to do is talk about the business of football. And I thought, man, I am so brilliant that I thought of this, and I'm going to be such a millionaire overnight. I'm going to do the cover magazines. So I did all my market research, Billy, and at the time, as today, the NFL Players Association published the cells and emails of every agent certified by the Players Association, about 1,500 names then. So I sent out a questionnaire to probably 100 of them, maybe 200, mailed them, and got several back that said, hey, a service like that would be kind of cool. And so I thought, so we launched Labor Day of 2002. And I couldn't sleep that night because I was afraid that when we flipped the switch and turned it on, we were going to get so many people that it was going to crash the servers, and I was going to be, you know, embarrassed and all those kind of things. And so that first day we got 2 subscribers, and on the second day, one of them wanted his money back. So that was my humble introduction to this industry. And so at the time, I had a 9-month subscriber cycle, and I charged $250 for it because that kind of mirrored what Street Smith was charging. Very quickly, I had a sale, and so I dropped my price from $250 to $45 for the 9-month cycle. Still couldn't find many people to subscribe, but whatever. So I go to this next Shrine game, and I'm kind of wandering around the hotel, and I've got maybe a dozen subscribers if I'm lucky. And I go around this corner, and there's 100 young men standing there in their shorts and nothing else, getting ready to go into weigh-ins.
Right.
And I thought, you know, if I'm going to track which agents assign which players, here's my golden opportunity. So I just started going down the line. and I got everybody's agent, and I put it on the site. Well, nobody else is doing that. The NFL Players Association wasn't publishing it, and it's such a high stakes business. Everybody wants to know what their competitors are doing, who they sign, all those kind of things. So I put that on the site, and we, in about a month, we had doubled or tripled our subscribers. So I thought, maybe this is something that people aren't doing. So I started going to all the All-Star games and doing the same thing. I'd find out when the weigh-ins were. I would wait until everybody was lined up, and I'd go right down the line. Everybody's alphabetical, really easy. Get all their agents, put it on the site. Agents loved it. Now we've got what I would call a cult following. Wow. Maybe we had 30 people that were paying $45 a year. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, well, listen, I still had my job at the Chronicle. I still was trying to do this and kind of figure it out. I thought, well, listen, at least it's a hobby that pays for itself. At least it's not something that I'm losing money. Maybe it's just going to be a hobby. So until 2000, it was kind of that. It was something that Polly tolerated. And at the time, Billy, I kind of hedged my bets. I was like, the draft guys, they're all over the web because at the time, again, the internet is starting to grow and people starting to put their stuff out there and build websites. And so I started doing mock drafts and player rankings because I thought that's what people wanted. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so we get to 2007, and long story short, I got hired to run the Hula Bowl as the executive director, that's the whole shooting match. You're running the whole thing. Yep. So that's a whole other podcast, but yeah, it was. But it was a great situation because I got to make a lot more contacts, build a lot more relationships with scouts. I got to build my own roster, all those kind of things. And that was all exciting. But the bad news was, and again, I can't go into a lot of detail here, mm-hmm. It bankrupted me because of some broken relationships. So I get home the week after the game and my phone cuts off and I find out I don't have health insurance anymore. And that's how I figure out that I'm no longer, the game's not going to happen anymore. The game's been canceled. So for a month, I kind of sat around and felt sorry for myself, wondering what was next. I mean, I'm 39, I think, and the game that I thought was going to be my salvation's crumbled beneath me, and it's not my fault, but things have really gone kind of badly. And so Polly's like, Neil, you tried to be everything to everyone with your site, and you tried to break it down to where you weren't charging anything. Why don't you go the other direction? Why don't you go to a monthly subscriber model, and you don't try to be a draft guy? Why don't you just try to be a business guy? And I said, what, you don't think I know what's best for me? Why don't you let me decide all that stuff? But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, I guess I got nothing to lose. And so I went to the combine and I'm like, hey, we're coming back. We're so excited because I had shuttered the site, as you mentioned earlier in 2007 when I took the Hula Bowl job. And so I thought there's going to be great, flourishing of trumpets, red carpet for me. And people were kind of like, okay, great, whatever. So when I relaunched in September of 2008, I introduced the monthly subscription model. And, even in 2008, we think about now ordering off Amazon, all those kind of things. People were still very reluctant to put their credit card information on the internet because they're afraid some guy in Chechnya in a dark room is going to steal their identity,
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yep.
But I had no plan B at this point. So we relaunched and not much interest. And so I remember we went and visited friends in Atlanta in probably October, November of that year. And I mean, at this point, Billy, I got no plan B. I mean, I'm at 40, 41 at the time. Oh, I'm working in a dead-end job just to pay the bills and hoping ITL can be my salvation, but it wasn't happening. And so I remember sitting across the table from my friend Chris and just kind of pouring it all out. I mean, I even got a little teary because I was terrified. Right. And at that point, we had Jake and Zach. We had two little ones. My wife is teaching. I'm working, again, a job that was not paying much and didn't have a lot of future. And, Chris said, listen, everybody's got to start somewhere. You just got to keep doing what you're doing. I know you can do it. Keep trying. And so we went. So the funny thing is, almost right after, you've seen the picture of the guy that's like digging through to try to get out of prison or whatever, and he's like
and
an
he
inch
stops.
away, and he turns around. Yeah,
right. Yep.
That's the picture of where I was then.
Right.
Because within 2 months, everybody had all these agents that had said, "Well, I'm not paying $30 or 25 a month." And well, they wanted that information that I was going to get at the All-Star game. So they came back. All of them came back in December and January. And now they weren't paying $45 a month. They were paying $45 for a year. They're paying $25 a month. So when I saw Chris again over the holidays or whatever, I think he could tell that I had kind of got my groove back. I had I had confidence about things, and the model had been tested and had shown to be something that could be sustained. And, praise God there. Since then, Billy, so many things have happened. And again, by God's grace, I mean, we have a big event at the Combine every year for scouts. And it's kind of like the Oscars for the scouting community. And we hand out awards that are voted on by their peers, and we give out plaques and we recognize people that have been in the business for a long time. And it's a lot of fun to do that. We're the leader in agent exam prep. We have a practice guide, a study guide, and 2 practice exams. We introduced a video series last year. We typically, about half the class that gets certified uses our tools. We are among the leaders in interview prep. I've got a former NFL general manager named Jerry Angelo, who's a prince of a guy, way more energy than me, and he's probably in his late 70s or early 80s. And he works with a number of the top firms. We worked with probably a half a dozen to a dozen first rounders this year, getting them ready for the Combine and what questions would be asked and what they needed to say and how they kind of drawing them out so they'd be honest about things and just getting them ready for the rigors of those really tough conversations that some of them have to have. Mm-hmm. I have a somewhat robust Twitter presence, really not that, less than 12,000 followers, but we track the scouting community's hirings and firings from, it's really started after the draft and lasts up until kind of mid-July. And we're kind of recognized for that. And we're fortunate because we kind of been accepted by the scouting community. It's funny. I was in Tampa, Florida at an All-Star game probably 4 or 5 years ago. And a guy came up to me who was probably half my size and twice my age. And he said, "Are you Neil Stratton?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You reported that I got let go by a team last spring." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "If you hadn't put it out there, I wouldn't have gotten my next job because they wouldn't have even known that I was on the street." And it's funny because as this guy's approaching me, I'm thinking, here's a guy who's twice my age and half my size, and he's about to kick my ass in front of all these people. And it's going to be really embarrassing. And it turned out, praise God, that it was a positive for him.
With nothing like you thought, right?
Yeah. So it's fun because I don't ever put that someone was fired. I just say they parted ways or whatever. But I try to be very respectful to these people. I don't want them to think that I'm an adversary. I'm just a guy who's putting this stuff out there, but I want to be a friend. So in so many ways, God has helped me and has, ITL has manifested in ways that I never expected. And I think anytime you start down this journey, you don't know exactly what direction it's going to go. There are certainly a lot of things that I need to work on. I mean, including my language. I used a bad word just now. I'm not proud of that, but there are a lot of things where I have grown also. And again, I just have to credit him for the works that he has done in my life and all the blessings that have come. Some I've had to wait on, but they've still come and come just in his time,
Brother, your story is so inspirational, man, just listening to you.
Well, it's been fun, Billy, and I'm blessed, and I know that it's a niche service. It's not the kind of thing where you're going to get rich and famous, but if you are genuine and you develop these relationships with people, it becomes such a blessing. And sometimes I'm a blessing to them. there's nothing more rewarding, Billy, than helping people live their dreams, and that's one of the things that I get to do in my capacity. With
You're serve. We're here to serve.
And you do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just you serve in different places. You know, you kind of bloom where you're planted.
Are you familiar with Scripture, James, chapter 1, 3rd verse?
Absolutely. I just said 1-3. Oh yes.
Oh my God!
But I know it. Yeah.
Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. I was thinking about that the whole time that you're talking, man. Listen, you're only I shouldn't say that. I mean, entrepreneurs like myself will have a greater appreciation for what you started and where you are right now. You can't even describe how hard it is. Right? You can't even describe.
And if I had known, Billy, I probably wouldn't have done it. You know? I mean, there were times, again, and I got hired by the Hula Bowl, I was so relieved because I'm like, man, this service is not going to ever perform the way I thought it was going to, and maybe this will be my salvation. And then after the Hula Bowl, I'm like, what are my options now? Do I try to go to law school? Do I try to get a different job? I mean, should I try to be this, and this? I didn't know. But again, God had a plan for me if I would just be faithful to him. And I think that's how I've done that. Now, sometimes, Billy, the answer is go to law school, get another job, do something else. I'm not trying to say that, you know, there are no happy endings even as Christians. But in this case, I think being faithful to a vision was what he wanted for me. After praying and thinking about it and going to scriptures, I made that determination. By God's grace, it has worked out that way, you know. So, again, I've just been really blessed. I always tell people, Billy, when I was growing up, I wanted to be one of three things. I wanted to be a professional basketball player, I wanted to be the president, or I wanted to be an NFL insider. I got to be one of those things. Not everybody gets to do that. When you're growing up, you're never sure what you want to be, but you maybe have some idea. And I got to do one of those things. Again, it's a God thing solely. So I know that I have so many friends that are professionals, successful, but they don't really have a passion for what they do. I look forward to my days, Billy. I mean, there's never a time when I'm not excited about what I'm doing. And even after 20 plus years doing this, I'm still learning stuff all the time. And it's an evolving marketplace, and people are adapting all the time, and they're doing business differently. And it fascinates me to hear people's stories about how they make money, you know, because everyone's kind of there are common threads, but then there are also ways that even people that are doing something completely different from me, I can usually learn something from them because there's something about what they're doing that has sustained them and allowed them to go on a path that's been successful for them. So, I mean, I'm kind of a nerd about that.
I get it, man. But I got to go back. I'm going back to your perseverance. And I mean, we even talked about it, you know, a little while ago when I told you about my podcast and how long I've been, you know, when I've been doing this. Yeah. You know, had I known the details and how much work that it requires to do this, like ahead of time, I don't know. But here's the thing, right? God doesn't tell you, say, look, this is what I want you to do. You be faithful. You put in the work. Now, God doesn't say, this is what's going to happen on this day, this many hours, at this time. No, he just says, do the work. Just work. And you did. You have. And your faith, which started when you were second grade, and your perseverance, hand in hand, bro.
Well,
oh my gosh.
You're right. But again, Billy, I mean, I don't. It's just putting one foot in front of the other. You know, it's always going to be hard. There's always going to be a lot of work involved, but you just got to get out there and get into it. You know, get started. It's so easy to say there'll be a better time to do this, or maybe I should take a break from this. And God knows there are lots of times when I said that. You know, but it worked out. I mean, I remember distinctly, Billy, laying in bed probably year one of our marriage and thinking, are we going to be eating dog food when we're in our 60s? I mean, that was not a joke. That was maybe this is where we're headed, you know?
We're going to do this.
Yeah. And here's the verse that I put at the shirt tail of my emails that go out. It's Numbers 14:7-9. I said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord's with us. Do not be afraid of them. So God takes them to the promised land, Bill. You know this story. It's full of tribes of people. I mean, these people want to kill you. They're not just going to say, "Oh yeah, come on in."
Just come on in. Yeah. Have some. Nope.
No, you got to go fight it. You got to go get it. And that's the thing. That's my takeaway. God's going to lead you there. There's no guarantee of success, but he's going to take you there, and he's going to be with you when it happens, and he's going to walk with you through it, but you're going to have to go get it. And that's kind of been my story. It took a lot longer for me to go get it than I thought. Right. You always think, oh, this is going to, like I said, I thought my server was going to crash. I thought it was going to be an instant success. I was far from that. Even now, I'm certainly not rich and famous, but I have achieved a level to where my wife's not asking me when I'm going to get a job, and we're half comfortable. And that's more than I can ask for from God. That's certainly not, Jesus never achieved comfort, and that wasn't even his goal, So, more things that you already know. But I have been given that despite the fact that I don't deserve it.
You just hit on something that my uncle, it's right in front of me. I'm going to read you a quote. My uncle was Max Robinson. I don't know if you know the name or not, but he was the first black news anchorman in the country. And anyway.
Wow. I did not know
So he was on, real quick, he started Channel 9 News, Eyewitness News in Washington, D.C. and ended up in Chicago, World News Tonight with Ted Koppel. He was so.
Wow.
This was one of his quotes. And I got goosebumps when you said what you just said. This is his quote. Whenever you're the first, you have to take all of the problems of breaking down the barriers of getting people to understand certain things that they couldn't have understood because you are the first. That's what you lived, man. That's why
I've got a good friend named Jose Jefferson. He runs the College Bear on Showcase. It's an all-star game down here in Fort Worth. And Jose always says, everybody wants to be best, but nobody wants to be first. He's exactly right. And I think about that all the time because, lots of times there's not going to be a path marked out for you. You have to just get a machete and chop through the woods. Your uncle had to do the same thing. I'm looking at him right now. I remember him now. I've got him pulled up on my screen. But it's that's what. But again, he's going to go with you. It's just he's not going to make it easy for you, and you shouldn't even ask for that. At least that's been my experience.
Now, I've been doing all the questions. I answer all the questions. Is there stuff that or things you want to share that we haven't talked about, or
I would like to point people to. I've got a blog. It's at succeedinfootball.com, and I link to you on Twitter for those people that live on Twitter and stuff.
Thank you.
And I just got 4 points there, and it doesn't take long to read through it. It's about 600 words. My 4 points are I think these have kind of been the lessons I've learned as I've gone through all this. Number 1, put God first. We've already discussed that extensively. Number 2, take a different path. I think it's really important to try to don't do the same things everybody else is doing because you got a lot more competition that way, Billy. When you went in the direction of Anabo, you were taking it in a different direction from what other people were among trainers.
Completely.
You're making it a little bit quicker. You're making it more efficient. It's a program that anybody can do. When Pa and I used to do it online with you, it's like nothing else that we had done. That came from you, and it gave you, again, an avenue that not everybody else was on. So that's an example in your life. You can probably think of 100 others. I think 2 more points. Number 1, surround yourself with people invested in you. That starts with your spouse, but it's not just your spouse. I talked about my friend Chris, who kind of gave me the pep talk. So many other people. My brother, I've talked about. My mentor's name is John Paul Young. That's another great story that I've blogged about in the past. He was like on staff with Bum Phillips pretty much everywhere he went back in the old days, in the Earl Campbell days and all those kind of things.
Legendary, yeah.
Oh, man. And I met, and again, long story short, I met John Paul. I was nobody. He had done all these things, and yet he wanted to help me. And I didn't deserve that. It's just someone that God put in my path that allowed me to really grow and figure out, I guess, what direction I wanted to go. And then the last thing I think is you know, when I first started ITL, I thought, man, I'm going to be so big and so popular and so famous. I think I'm not going to have time for relationships. But the path that I've been taking on it is a very small corner of the industry. And because it is, that has allowed me to work a lot more hand in hand with people who are struggling, trying to figure out this business. How am I going to be successful in this? Maybe that's in trying to get a job in scouting. Maybe that's in moving from area scout to general manager. Maybe that's in just becoming an agent and getting certified. Maybe that is in not just becoming an agent and getting certified, but now taking the next level and getting a first rounder or something like that. It's number one, it's fascinating to help all these people. Number two, it's just fun to, I guess, walk with them through the woods. And I guess one of the best compliments I've ever been given was when someone else told me, yeah, I met this person and she said that you're a really genuine person. And so I try to remember that because that's really important, obviously. And I think when you're genuine, I think people read that and they recognize that, and hopefully it disarms them a bit, makes them feel like they don't need to be defensive, makes them feel like here's a person who possibly could be a friend. And I think that's a fruit of spirit too. I mean, it's just something that it comes out of you if you are really trying to stay on the path.
Brother, you've moved me, and I'm sure others listening to this show will think the same. Your perseverance, I know you just say it's just who you are. All right. Well, it takes a lot of work to be just who you are. Okay. It's not easy. But when you combine that to that no quit, I'm not quitting, I believe in this, I'm not quitting, I believe in this, I'm not quitting. And you combine that with God, and God gives you, and God gives you the okay.
Yeah.
Wow. This is just not just good for me, just for other people who, man, there's a lot of people out here struggling right now trying to figure out, what do I want to do?
Sure. And
it's kids, teenagers, whatever, to adults who still don't know, I don't know what I want to do.
Right. That's true.
It's so encouraging. So encouraging. Thank you so much for sharing, man.
Yeah.
And being here today. Is there anything we missed? Do you know what? If you do this for me, and you'll be good at this. Share some nuggets for people, for our audience, on, not to get started, but to reroute if you have to reroute. What are some nuggets to write?
Well, there are a few. I think number one, you're going to have, I don't care what age you are, you're going to have to give yourself away, give your blood, sweat, and tears away for free at first. You're going to have to be willing to humble yourself, volunteer, work for someone, because you've got to find someone that will be your champion. That's number two. Find someone that will go to bat for you, that will help you along the way. And God knows I've had several of those along the way, but you've got to find someone who's going to help you up and not ask for anything, and be willing to say, yeah, I know Neil Stratton, he'd be a good hire for you. He'd be a good guy. I think that's beneficial as well. But the most important thing is you got to be relational. For example, there are a lot of people that want to be NFL scouts. It's become a very sexy position, especially in the last maybe 10 years. And a lot of people spend a lot of money going to classes and doing things like that. But you've got to be relational. And the way you're relational is you go and you be there. You go to these all-star games. You go to the combine. You meet people. And when you meet them, you don't make it all about the business. And I know that's hard, because if you get some quality time with someone, you want to say, hey, what can I do to find a job? Mm-hmm. The experience I've been told is, can you give me advice on this? Number one. And number two, ask about non-football stuff. Ask it, and that applies to any profession. I don't care if you're in insurance or whatever. If you're trying to find someone who's trying to get you a job or help you professionally, don't just come at them with, what can you do for me? Come at them with, how's your family? Like Billy, when we got on the call, first thing we do is talk about our families for the first 15 minutes.
Yep.
Be that person who's interested in the person rather than just what that person can do for them. You know,
Yep.
it's got to be a two-way street. And again, it kind of goes back to being genuine. You know, I think that if you are willing to make those sacrifices, which very often involves volunteering, if you can find someone that will be your advocate, and if you'll go where you need to be and be relational and not strictly about the business, I think that's three things that will help you, especially in the football community, but maybe generally in the professional.
It was a strong man. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. This was amazing.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's always, anybody can talk about themselves, right? It's just, and again, because it's somewhat of a happy ending, it's a little easier to talk about. Now, there are struggles ahead, and we're trying we got some projects we're trying right now, and they may blow up in our faces, but you know, you just stay in the fight, right?
You're still going. There you go.
And figure it out. Yeah, that's all you can do.
God bless you, buddy.
Allow me to take a moment to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on the podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you will find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and much, much more.